Hey guys, this is Kelly. I had, a, I had an experience recently with the movement that revealed to me what was kind of knowable anyway, and that is that the people, the intellectuals, the people, the education that we've had over the last few decades, century or so, has kind of made the educated person maleducated, and he tends to ignore the fact that what the government really is a monopoly on the initiation of violence. Isn't that interesting? It's hard to get people to realize that. I think maybe the younger generation might be a little bit more sensitive to that reality. And what brought it to fore was that a couple of couple of movement leaders, the old-time movement leaders, they said that libertarianism means no rules, which is kind of like saying, well, that if somebody doesn't want the government to create rules for English language or for any language, or say rules for constructing a building, they would rather have it be a naturally evolved tradition of carrying things out, that therefore they don't believe in rules. Well, government doesn't do those things, and government has nothing to do with language. They have to do with the interference of construction. They have to do with the so-called insurance of safety for construction. But they don't really construct construction principles. They don't designate construction principles. They're a naturalistic, evolutionary, wonderful kind of, they're a human art, language and building. And of course, there's lots of things like that, right, that we do. Business, very little is defined by any formal body that we do. It's all in what's the word, inherent in our lives. Moreover, the way rules come about is from our mothers, basically, right? That's by giving us love, by giving us ourselves, our individual selves, we naturally cooperate. Even a jerk like me, to some degree. But as my mother said, I always did what I wanted. Anyway, so that's the big problem of the older generation of the movement. And I'm trying to prevent this from being part of the younger generation, is to assume authority where it doesn't belong. To take an organic, a natural phenomenon of knowledge, of functioning knowledge, not written down knowledge, not recorded, not intellectually described except in the abstract. You can write books about business, you can write books about construction, you can write books about language, but you don't prescribe language. And there might be a little bit of those things, but new theorists might come along. But that's nothing compared to the bulk of what life is, of what all these arts of life are, the art of living, so to speak. So that's the big problem that I want to disabuse anybody who is open-minded, and of course as TMers we are more open-minded. That's what TM does. So where does all these, where do rules come from? Are they laid on top of us with a great effectiveness, with efficaciousness, having these rules laid on us from legislative bodies? Or does the mass of humanity, the customs and manners and language rules and technologies that we have and behavioral rules, social rules, do they come spontaneously and naturally through trial and error and through intuition and feelings? You know, our mothers gave us as far as getting back to libertarianism goes, our mothers made us libertarians. A parent does not focus on controlling the child. A parent's focus is on nourishing the child's individuality, which the parent has the best chance of intuiting. Because nobody knows, and it has to be intuited. No one knows who we are. Even us as individuals don't know ourselves so much. So, parents having the same genetics, especially, it's helpful, although there are good adoptive parents as well. The parents intuit and they ask, and they teach us language, and they get feedback from the child, and verbally and emotively and gesticulatively as to whether they're happy about the circumstances that they are given, that they find themselves in. The parents want the child to be happy, and the way the child can be happy is by being himself, by being his individual self. And so, having done that, the child grows up. Well, how does he treat other people? Well, he treats other people with respect for their individuality. He inquires as to their feelings and thoughts and makes observations about them to see if they seem to be satisfied with the situation, because everybody wants everybody else. Nobody wants to pretend with any sense. Nobody with any sense pretends that he's an island unto himself. And so that's the fundamental rule of life, is concern for others. That's what makes society, that's what makes wealth. And that's a interactivity between individuals multiplied, permutated, and combined throughout the world. That's the only source of wealth. Now, is there a standard of violation of law? Of course there is. But it doesn't have to come from a monopoly. You know, the truth of the matter is that although we have to have language to create an objective truth in order to come to agreement, that's what an agreement is. It's an objective truth. Objectivity is intersubjective agreement. If it's intersubjective agreement, and subjectivity, as I said in the beginning, is a mystery. Why we need genetically similar people to take care of us so we can intuit each other. why we because subjectivity is private. That's why we need to have that intuition and that communication, that mother tongue to convey deeper feelings about things, to get some feeling about what's coming out of our subjectivity. In other words, the foundation of our objective world. That's why the world is not describable. The human world is not describable. Even the physical world is not describable. You might come up with some principles, but in either case, the human world or the social world or the physical world, you don't know how that person's going to, what the world will create out of all those subjectivities in the world, right? You don't know. Well, even supposing nobody had any subjectivity and everything was objective, which is absurd. But even then, it would be unpredictable. It would be unmappable. And of course, life is dynamical and changing all the time. As it says in chapter 4, verse 17 of Gita, unfathomable is the course of action. Okay, so libertarianism means no rules. Well, obviously, everything I've been talking about is libertarianism. No one coerced anyone. Libertarianism is the opposite of the initiation of violence. That's what I've been talking about. Our parents don't commit violence against us unless they're bad parents. Most parents nurture us as individuals. It's not that their main role is to control us. And so that's our attitude towards society. That's our attitude towards our fellow man. And so, libertarianism means no rules. Obviously, free choice creates tons of rules. All the technologies and languages and sciences, all these rules that are inherent in those things come out of voluntary exchange. Voluntary exchange. Now, since the world is a world of scarce resources, with all due respect for those who think that there's such a thing as free energy, the world is a place of scarce resources. So that's why we have to have private property rights. Because you're the only one that knows how you feel about your own self and your own actions, but that includes private property. We live in a world of private property. Otherwise, we'd all be naked. And we wouldn't have any right for anybody else not to shove us aside and take our spot where we're standing. So that's where we live. That's what libertarianism is. And it's not the initiation of violence, which is what government is. So here we are stuck with all these dinosaur, mal-educated leaders of the TM movement. It's not good. It's not good because if you think that there is an objective reason to coerce somebody, and ignoring his subjectivity, ignoring the voluntary rules that were created through his cooperative nature, the individual's nature, as learned from his mother's love for him, and his father's love for him, and his family's love for him, supporting his individuality. If you think that that there's something other than that which creates objective reality and objective rules, then you're if you think that there's an independence of that subjectivity, then you will impose on those people for their own good. So if that's the quality of the movement, the leadership of the movement, that's gonna create a lot of problems. Now, just think about how different the movement is from it used to be. Remember back in the 80s? Tremendous amount of control regarding the program, getting to the program. Tremendous control. Of course, there's no control within the practice, effortless technique. But nowadays, oh, is it much more liberal? It is as liberal, more liberal than anyone could imagine 35 years ago when I first got here. How the way the DOME program is structured, the way people are allowed to come in late, the way they're allowed to wander around, the way they're allowed to do pranayama during program, or, well, that was even instructed by Maharshi, or even the dome is free. You can pay or not pay, So the movement is more, in that respect, more liberal. But the thinking of, because they got damn desperate. Because to their credit, they want the numbers. But there's something internally wrong with people who think that that life is fundamentally not subjective. Logically, I mean, consciousness is about subjectivity and becoming objectivity and integrating the two. Or objectivity becoming subjectivity, or subjectivity becoming full. But in the meanwhile, we're not enlightened. If we were enlightened, we wouldn't have any trouble getting the numbers up, would we? So that's the problem. That too many people are dinosaurs on that level, that are brainwashed about what constitutes society. It's voluntarism. It's love. That's what it is. And by the way, law can come voluntarily. Don't have to have a monopoly on the initiation of violence to create law. It's absurd. The old gold mines, the first couple of years, it was anarchy. They had their own voluntary committees to decide who owned what gold mine. Worked out good. It was actually much less violent than after the government came in, because the government comes in with an imposed rule, not an organic rule, not a naturally occurring, developed rule amongst the miners that first arrived. So it happens in everything. Everything's like that. Business is always like that. All international business is anarchistic. There is no government involvement because the governments don't have agreement. That's why they have things like escrow. And I imagine there are rating agencies to rate these people. There is on eBay, Amazon. There are rating agencies there. The law of merchants started 1,000 years ago because the European governments, they didn't handle contract violations, because they all had different laws, maybe within their countries, but not between them. So this authoritarianism is the problem, and I don't know how it's manifest. I haven't thought about that. I haven't thought about it that far. But you know damn well if people are thinking like that, then they're going to act like that. Well, in my case, that was probably the case, that they were trying to impose on me what, when I got in trouble with the movement recently. They were imposed not rules to which I had agreed, but rules which were presumed, and which was really a personal, I don't want to call it a vendetta, but a personal hang-up about me in particular. Because if you look at, all the people who dress in terms of rules on campus, even the faculty are dressing very casually. And there was a real problem there, a real assumption of an objectivity that didn't exist. And that's what's matter. That's the manifestation of the notion that there is a standard that comes outside of the individual to which he didn't agree. In a free society, if somebody doesn't like somebody else, they don't have to invite them to their house. They don't like somebody else. When they invite people, it's because they like them, because they agree with each other, or invite them to their business, or invite them as customers, or as employees, or as partners, or as social partners. Don't have to do it. And when you do it, there's tons of rules. And that's libertarianism. And on the other hand, the monopoly of government, initiation of violence, is by definition a ruleless society. I have a monopoly on the initiation of violence. That means I don't have to follow the rules. Now, politically, it's sometimes difficult to do that. But just look how rotten the people in government are. And we supposedly have the power to get rid of them. And of course, they're still there. And they're not going anywhere until the whole thing breaks apart, which it will, which I hope it does. Because that's the only way it's going to change anyhow. Just as that's the only way the numbers are going to go up. As I said in my last video. Collapse. Total collapse. So, who do you want to be? You want to be a pretender? Do you want to be a dictator? Or do you want to be somebody who respects the values of other people, the inner values of other people, as a mystery, and one to which you would inquire, or one to which you would exclude in your company? Easily done in a free society, not easily done in a society that's not libertarian. It's impossible. Thank you, Jay Goodell.